All right, welcome to episode 24 of the Retro Game Club podcast. I'm Rob, and with me as always is one of the only people not being sued by Bandai, Hugh.
Yes. Well, I don't know. I did get a mysterious letter in the mail, so I haven't opened it yet.
So it's pending.
Yeah, I hear if you aren't actually served with the paperwork, then it doesn't count.
That's what I heard also, so just don't, open any mail from Japan.
Right. Yes, and never accept envelopes from people on the street. If someone comes up and says, hey, I need you to take this envelope, don't.
Yeah.
That's all I've learned about life.
Yeah, well, if only some of our news items would have learned that.
Yes. I don't know if that's real or not.
Well, what have you been up to since we kind of just recorded? We wanted to sneak one in just in case here.
Yeah, so I'm playing Link's Awakening, and I think I'm at the final dungeon. I think it's the final. If I remember the game correctly, I think I'm at the last dungeon in the game, or maybe second to last, but very, very near the end.
There's like 8 dungeons, right?
Yeah, it's the pretty standard Zelda formula in terms of dungeons, and then there's like a hidden dungeon that's optional, and then there's the dungeon designer mode, which I haven't played around with too much.
So, how do you think it compares to the original or the DX version?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I almost need to play the DX version again. I mean, I like it a lot. I think the graphics look really nice. I feel like it's easier than the DX version.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. Now, it could just be that maybe that version wasn't very hard, and I'm kind of misreading, because I played through Oracle of Seasons again recently, and the Oracle of Ages, Oracle of Seasons games are like pretty difficult, relative to this average Zelda game. And maybe the DX is easier than I remember it being. I could just be being skewed from having played the other versions. I don't know. Overall, I like it. I mean, I'm definitely glad I got it, but it's not a long game. I mean, the reality is it's a Game Boy game. It's not super long to begin with. It's longer than the original Legend of Zelda, probably shorter than Link to the Past. So, about what I expected.
You experience any drift on your...
No, I haven't noticed anything yet.
Switch Lite?
Yeah, I've heard about Switch drift. Is that a problem? I've had one piece of Nintendo hardware ever go bad, and that was when I got the Wii U, the Wii Pad. Is that what they were really calling it?
I never had a Wii U, so I don't know.
The Wii Pad lost connectivity to the Wii permanently. Like, originally, it was fine for a couple days or a couple weeks. And then suddenly it's like, if you weren't sitting really close to the Wii, then it would start to throw errors about not being able to connect to the pad. And then after about another week, if you basically didn't have the Wii Pad touching the Wii, it wasn't going to work.
Huh.
And sent the pad in, Nintendo... But you have to send the entire system in. Like, Nintendo won't just replace the pad. You send the whole system in, and then they send you back your exact same system, but with a new pad.
But of course.
What? Yeah. I guess it's possible that it could be the base unit that's defective, but apparently that was not super uncommon. They had some issue with some component in the Wii Pad that would burn out really quickly.
Wow.
So, whatever. It's fine now. Eventually the Wii Pad will break again, I'm sure, and then I will never be able to play a Wii U game again, because most of the games, even if you don't need the pad, you at least need the pad to start the thing.
Yeah, that's so strange. But
and it's not like there's going to be a third-party replacement out there.
Yeah, and yeah. So, but I do think the Wii U was a step Nintendo needed to take to get to the Switch.
Yeah, I think so. Overall, I like the system. It's probably, as I look back on the decade, the decade's almost over.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably the system of this decade that I logged the most hours on.
Wow.
Mostly because of Breath of the Wild, but also because it has... It's almost like they should have just called it like the Nintendo Zelda delivery system. Because the whole purpose for buying a Wii U for me was like, okay, I can play Wind Waker Remake, I can play Twilight Princess Remake, I can play Breath of the Wild. And that's pretty much it for the Wii U library for me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, Splatoon was pretty big, but now it's not.
My kid has Splatoon. It's okay. We've played it a few times. it's okay. Not my favorite thing. Oh, what else? So, like a long time ago, I posted a review on my site of this sampler CD that we gave away at Electronics Boutique in 1996. It was literally like we were giving these things away like right when I stopped working there. So it's one of like the last little collectibles I have from there. And it was like this demo disc. It had a catalog, like an electronic catalog of what we sold in the stores. You needed QuickTime 2 to run the catalog. And then it had a bunch of like sampler games, Pitfall 95 and they probably weren't calling it Pitfall 95, Pitfall 4 Windows 95, stuff like that. And then, I posted a review and all that stuff, and it was kind of neat. Yeah, but I never posted the actual disc because I thought maybe I'll get like a takedown letter or something. And then it occurred to me that's never going to actually happen. So if you have like a spare 240 meg on your hard drive and like a Windows 95 virtual machine, you can now download this awesome sampler disc. I did check that someone hadn't already posted it to archive.org and someone hasn't.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's one from like 97 or 98. There's a later one, but this particular one was not on there. So I just posted it up on my site, and I guess you can install it and look at this awesome 1996 catalog.
I'll check that out.
Yeah, it's I don't know who will find it entertaining, but it's there. So that's about it. What have you been up to?
Same with Link's Awakening, except I'm only 2 or 3 dungeons in just because of a time constraint this week. But I'm really liking it. I've had no slowdown. I've had no problems with it. Yeah, it's a fun game. And then other than that, I've been playing a lot of Game Club games. And I got retro achievements working. And there's a thread going on our Facebook page to share your retro achievements links so we could friend each other. And yeah, I did Super Mario 3 and I did UniRacers. And it's fun. It pops up. Sometimes it's a icon, a unique icon for each achievement. For something that's a free open source service, I'm nothing but impressed. Mm-hmm. It serves no purpose, but for some reason, I'm really into it. I didn't think it would make me want to get these achievements because, like on PS4, I don't care about trophies at all. But now on RetroArch, I do. So I don't know what that says about me. But
yeah, the site's run by like I'll call it like an indie game developer, right?
I don't know. I didn't do any research on it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think it was. I mean, I always assume that I'm not accusing him of doing anything like untoward or anything, but I suspect part of setting it up is maybe this is a way to, get some free advertising for some of his games.
Which, hey, the service is so cool. I think it's worth it.
Yeah, right. I mean, who cares? It's not like, as far as I can tell, it's not like downloading a virus on your computer or anything.
No. So, you just create an account, put that account info in your RetroArch, and you're ready to go. And it's probably supported on other platforms too. It's just in the lib retro sphere, I think. I could be wrong. So there's probably people screaming at their radios right now. But yeah, that's about it.
All right. Want to look at some exciting news this week?
Yeah, the first one is pretty boring because we kind of already talked about it. But Laca, the Linux variant that has RetroArch built in, has a new version, and it supports RetroPie or Raspberry Pi 4. And it comes with the newest version of RetroArch. That's about it. So everything in the newest version of RetroArch that we've already talked about is in there. I don't think we need to go over all that again.
I think we're going to do a few emulation items together. What's this? Link's Awakening for Switch, remake, blah, blah, blah. Already bootable, something. So this is that you can emulate Link's Awakening already?
Kind of. It's bootable already. So first of all, Did you even know Switch emulation was a thing?
I did because pretty much I think every system there's going to be an emulator released really, really quickly. Whether or not it's any good is is a different matter. But the hacking community just moves so much faster than game developers expect them to. And also, let's be kind of blunt. Like the specifications for the Switch had probably been out for several months, if not a year, before the console was released. And I'm sure some developer at some game company leaked the specs to, in someone in the emulation community the day they received them.
And it's pretty much a Shield, right? An NVIDIA Shield.
Yeah, it's pretty close to one. So there's nothing surprising to me about a Switch emulator existing.
Yeah, once they get that, I think their OS is called iOS, if I remember right. Believe it or not. Nothing to do with Apple, though.
Yeah, and I mean, the UI on, like, the icons on the UI and on, like, the sleep menu, like, all that stuff has a very Android-y kind of look and feel to it. So I don't really... I guess I'm maybe surprised they aren't further along with Switch emulation than they are.
But the fact that it only took 24 hours to get Link's Awakening bootable is pretty funny.
Yeah, that's pretty good, yeah.
So, good on them. Next one, Beetle PSX has a new version. That's a PlayStation 1 emulator. It's now way faster and way more accurate. So if you're playing on an Intel machine, you could get up to 400 frames per second. Obviously, yeah.
Which you're going to totally notice.
Yeah. Now, they're saying, obviously, that's a beefy machine.
The base system runs at 60 frames per second because it's tied to television refresh rates.
Yeah. But this never worked good on ARM processors. So that's where this update really shines. So you can start using this with hardware acceleration on ARM.
Yeah, I'm a little bit interested because I've been using the PlayStation Classic to emulate PlayStation games. And overall, I really like it for that purpose. But I have run into a couple games that just don't run on it. And I've tried different images. Like, it's not just maybe I ripped the game wrong or something. So, like, Sim Theme Park just won't boot on it. And I've tried 2 different versions of it. Don't know why. It's bizarre. And then the original Wipeout, I can't get to boot on it either, which really was disappointing because I was looking forward to playing that again.
Then that seems like something that should run on any emulator that supports it because...
Yeah. Well, it was like a launch game.
Yeah, exactly.
Now again, it could be that maybe I ripped it wrong. I need to try... That one I did not try a second image of yet. But yeah, those are kind of the 2 that so far haven't been working. Everything else on it plays great.
Well, on our next story, if you want to try it on your 3DS, PS1 is now fully compatible on the 3DS for full speed, pretty much every game at 60 frames a second. I mean, that's not 400 frames a second, so...
Yeah, you're limited to, because you don't have enough. Yeah, you can't do a dual shock game, I guess, on the 3DS because you only have a D-pad and 1 analog controller. So you'd be limited what you can play, just like you can on the PlayStation Classic, of course.
True. Yeah.
But that would be kind of neat. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of PlayStation RPGs that I would be more inclined to play on a portable system than on TV.
And also, from this image, it looks like it shows you the console on the bottom screen, the console log.
Yeah,
so
it looks like they're dumping...
Yeah.
It's a debug menu or debug log on the bottom screen, which I'm sure... as a developer, there's nothing I'm sure you can appreciate more than just having a constant debug log running somewhere.
Yeah, it's funny that they just left it like that.
Yeah.
But,
it makes you look extra cool when you're playing it on the airplane or something. The person next to you will think you're doing something really crazy.
Yeah.
They'll think you wrote it, probably.
I should say this is not the same emulator as we were talking about before. This is the PSX ReArmed emulator. Which...
Right, different one, yeah.
Yeah, which I don't care what emulator I use as long as one works.
Let's see. House of the Dead 1 and 2 coming to the Switch.
How do you think that's going to work?
I don't know. I'm mostly wondering why the zombies are wearing such tight pants.
I know. They look like Abercrombie and Finch models.
Yeah. Yeah. What? That's really... It's never... Until I looked at the screenshot, I never realized how unsettling that is.
So, do you think... Can Joy-Cons be used as kind of light gun? I mean, I know there's no light sensor or anything, but...
Yeah, I mean, the motion side you could, right? You could... Like Link's crossbow training, something like that you could do. Maybe it's a Labo game. Labo has like a gun, right?
Oh, that's a funny idea. It's like a kid's toy mixed with zombies.
Yeah, it's got, but it has like the like a super scope setup, right?
I forget.
Is that one of the Labos? I'm like 90% positive I've seen someone playing Labo with the super scope type style.
Yeah, I see pictures here.
So that's what I would imagine they would be doing.
Wow, this Labo Super Scope really looks like an Onion article.
Yeah, only Nintendo can get away with charging you like $50 for cardboard. I mean, Apple, you have no idea how envious Apple must be that Nintendo managed to pull that off.
True.
Because
but
if Apple could figure out how to sell you just, sheets of cardboard for $100 a piece, they would.
I think I like those games better than you do, so I'm excited to see how they pull this off.
Yeah, I mean, they're the kind of thing where if I'm at an arcade with free play mode, I will play those kind of games.
Mm-hmm.
But I really don't ever set up the shooter games very much. I never really. You would think I would be, because if you grew up in a house where like it's sort of weird. Like my father was in the military, but my mother was like vehemently anti-gun. It obviously didn't work out.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
So when you kind of grow up in a house where like guns are completely banned and any imagery or like anything gun related is banned, you would think like then as an adult I'm gonna just arm myself to the teeth and play Super Scope games all the time or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And no, not really. It's never really been into it.
No, it's not so much the Lycon I like. I don't know. There's just no way to really do something like that with a mouse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think I like those games because they were on such a big screen at like Dave & Buster's or something that it was definitely an experience.
Yeah. I mean, it's a game that I think is not going to do well in a portable mode. I feel like you really need a big screen TV and some sort of light gun to make this work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, we'll see. It doesn't even have a release date, so this will definitely be on the show again.
Yeah.
Next one, meet the people making music with Mega Drives, Game Boys, and G Ataris. What's a G Atari? Oh, it's a Guitar Atari. Guitari, thank you. Oh man, that's great.
It's like keytar, but this is you can't say guitar because that's how some people pronounce guitar, right?
Yeah.
So you would have to go Guitari, I guess.
So this is a long article on Eurogamer.net. Of course it is. It's a fantastic article interviewing and talking about a few different musicians who do Game Boy and Mega Drive and Atari, not only music, but live shows. And yeah, the Guitari, there's a great live set on this where he has, it's like an Atari with a guitar neck-ish with 3 guitar pedals plus a few triggers on it. Looks like a product you might be able to buy.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing you would see like this is my Kickstarter prototype is what it looks like.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like he's going to not mass produce, but make a few thousand of these. But that's not what he's doing. It does have that look to it though, where you're sort of inventing a musical instrument out of various pieces of old computer and video game hardware, and then using those sound chips to to produce new electronic music. And really, like, the Genesis, I like the sound of the Genesis in general. I've always liked, like, the Super Nintendo has some incredibly great soundtracks. I mean, Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy VI, Shadowrun, they're all like some of the best soundtracks of the era. But for some reason, I still like something about the sound of the Mega Drive sound chip. I just like better. I still like Phantasy Star 2 and 4 better than most of the Super Nintendo library, or any of the Yuzo Koshiro stuff on Mega Drive.
Well, and this also makes me think about, love or hate the EverDrive, but the EverDrive gives musicians an option to create a ROM. They can, they don't have to burn to a chip. They could just use an EverDrive and make their Mega Drive or any system a musical instrument. And there's a lot of homebrew products they call out, like Sound DJ or Nano Loop are a few they call out. There's some great videos here and that just link to the music, and it's so impressive. I was actually really jamming to it like all morning. So yeah, if any of our listeners likes music at all or is just sitting there at work looking for something to listen to, click on this link.
So this is a really weird one. I don't understand it. Bandai releasing a build-your-own Sega Saturn model kit.
And it's not like it works.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not a functional Sega Saturn.
It's a model.
It's like a model car, which is not my thing, but I understand people being into building them. But it's a Sega Saturn.
Yep.
Because looks like they also have a PlayStation 1. So who's this for?
I don't understand. The way they have these set up, it actually does look like some of the photographs from that book we talked about in the last episode.
It does, yeah. But it's not. So they cost about $23 a piece, so clearly they're not functional. You end up getting something that looks like a game system that you see at IKEA.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when you go to IKEA and they have the bedroom set up, and then there's like the plastic Nintendo 64. Have you seen this?
Yes.
But it's like it is cosmetically Nintendo 64, but there's nothing inside.
Why wouldn't you just get a Saturn?
Yeah, well, I think Saturns, I don't know if they're expensive. The PlayStation 1, I can definitely buy the argument of why don't you just buy one? Because any like retro gaming convention, there will be someone with a stack, literal, like an 8-foot tall stack of PlayStation 1s for $5 a piece. And they're usually labeled like 4 parts. But that's the thing, like, if I want to get, let's see, Sega Saturn 4 parts on eBay, like just parts only, $9.99 to $20. Yeah, $10 to $20 for a Sega Saturn parts only. I see a Japanese one that's a little dinged up for $1 plus $25 shipping though. Yeah, that's the problem. If you get a Japan one, it's going to cost more.
Yeah.
But I mean, you could set up an eBay alert and eventually get a just broken Sega Saturn and clean it up a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a model because you could get a broken Sega Saturn and a Sega Saturn motherboard that works, and there you go.
Yeah. But then you'd have to play Sega Saturn games. So, do you think the Dreamcast needs its own micro console?
I'm on the fence with this one because a lot of the games I want I have on Steam or some sort of virtual console. And the games I don't have, I either have ISOs for because they don't exist anywhere else. Like, isn't Panzer Dragoon's code gone or something like that?
Yeah, I think that's one of the games where where they don't have the source code anymore. Yeah, so there's an article that we're going to link to here making the case for why there needs to be a Dreamcast Mini console with some proposed games. And yeah, a lot of our games I can kind of get on other systems. I mean, that's maybe the problem, is because when the Dreamcast failed, Sega then started porting a lot of these Dreamcast games to PlayStation 2, Xbox, or GameCube. And then they had, remakes for PC and so on. And a lot of these games are still pretty available. So it's hard to say. Like, I think a Dreamcast Mini, if done right, would probably sell. They'd probably sell 100,000 of them at $90 a piece without too much effort, would be my guess.
Yeah, I wonder what kind of specs it would need, though, to be able to run all these properly.
Yeah, this is 20-year-old hardware now,
Yeah.
I don't think you need that much. I realize it's, but 20, I mean...
It would
the system made in 1999. I mean, let's be
yeah, true. Yeah,
it is now. In 1999, could you emulate something made in 1979 pretty well?
Oh yeah, very easily.
Right? So,
there you go.
I imagine you could make a pretty cheap, like for probably $30 worth of hardware, you could make a really good Dreamcast emulation box, and then you mark it up for sell it for 90.
It'll be pretty cool to see if they did this, how they would do the VMUs. Would you get...
They just wouldn't.
They just wouldn't, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I would buy one of these.
Yeah, the VMU isn't really required for most games. Other than to say, I'm not counting like the save. I'm not talking about saving and loading. I'm talking about like the screen part of the VMU isn't really... I can't think of a game where I really did anything useful with the VMU. I haven't played a huge number of Dreamcast games. We talked about Dreamcast a couple weeks ago. I was, very, very blunt about here are the games I've played. So maybe there's, I don't know, like Shenmue, which of course you can buy on PlayStation 4 now. I don't think there was anything useful. I don't think Phantasy Star Online needed it.
Yeah, was there a football game that you can choose your plays with VMU? Or at least you would see them?
I don't think there's enough real estate to actually see anything on them. And besides, you couldn't put that on a micro console anyways. Right? Because you'd have to get the NFL license.
True, yeah.
This is why you don't see, the Sega Genesis Mini comes out. The highest selling game ever for the or one of the highest selling games for the Genesis is probably Madden 95. Right, so it's the last Madden before there were, PlayStation versions, before there were 32-bit versions of Madden.
Mm-hmm.
I can assure you, Madden 95 on Genesis sold more copies than you can possibly envision. Because I was working at a store then. But it's not on any of the Sega Genesis Classic collections because you have to do the NFL. You have to clear the NFL license.
Yeah, and they are not very nice about that.
Right. I was thinking about it because I went to Six Flags Fright Fest Friday night. So I live kind of near that. If you live near a Six Flags amusement park, their Halloween stuff is awesome. If you like Halloween stuff, it's really great. But they play spooky music or in the background or which is a lot of they do a lot of rock songs that have Halloween type sound to them. And while I was in the park, I noticed at one spot they were playing the opening of For Whom the Bell Tolls by Metallica. And my first thought was, there is no way they cleared that.
Yeah, yeah.
If anyone mentions to Metallica that Six Flags is using one of their songs, that's a multi-million-dollar lawsuit.
And we all know Metallica loves to sue.
Yeah, and they don't license their music for anything ever, just about.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Which is, it's their right to do that. Again, not my place to tell Metallica what to do with their music, but enough Metallica talk.
Atari and Arcade One-Up announce exclusive partnership for iconic titles.
For iconic, not just regular titles, but iconic ones.
So listeners that don't know, somehow, One-Up are the ones who do the Walmart build your own arcade cabinet. I guess that's how you describe it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the sort of, 3/4 scale arcade cabinets.
Yeah, we've talked about them at length here. So, I guess it's just an exclusive that no one else will make Atari cabinets? Maybe?
That's how I'm interpreting it to mean, yeah.
So which cabinets do you think you would want them to
Well, they're
make?
talking about... So they're talking about. This is a weird announcement because they're like, we're announcing Centipede and Asteroids, which they already have. I'm still not sure what they're announcing here, other than they're going to keep doing this. It's a strange announcement. It's like it's like Honda announcing that they now sell cars. You know what I mean? Like, okay,
exactly.
So, whatever. Maybe Atari's looking for some good press this week. We'll get to that later.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I mean, I've looked at these cabinets a lot, and like the only one I would maybe consider getting the Mortal Kombat one, and the Pac-Man one, if it had Miss Pac-Man, would be kind of intriguing, but it doesn't. And there's some Miss Pac-Man licensing news later on in this episode if you weren't, if you're curious about that. But I know, like I said, when I stand next to these things, it's just like they're too small.
Even with the stand?
Yeah, even with the stand, they're still pretty. If you're over 5'10", you're really going to have a hard time playing these.
It'd be cool if no one's really done a repro of Asteroids Deluxe, which if you don't remember that cabinet, it's Asteroids, but harder, but it also has a thing where in the background there's like a black light lit up asteroid field, and the screen it's so hard to describe through a microphone, facing up, so you're looking at a mostly reflected version of that screen over the asteroid lit up background.
Yeah,
it just looks really slick, and no one's really done that. Well,
it's on. So if you get something called Atari Anniversary Edition, the Dreamcast version here, Asteroids Deluxe is on there, and probably any other thing called Atari Anniversary Edition. I think it might be like a PlayStation port of it also.
Yeah,
I don't know if it looks as cool as you're describing, but
no, there's no way.
It's out there.
No way. Let's see. I'm looking at this right now. No, it doesn't even look nearly as cool. But yeah.
So sticking with Atari, the register.co.uk has a little piece here called "Time to Check In Again on the Atari Retro Console, and Dear God, It's Actually Got Worse." So I guess in the past couple weeks, like, the hardware designer for this thing left.
Wow.
Which seems like maybe you need a hardware designer.
If you're building a console, it's probably a good idea.
Right. And then, essentially, like, Atari at one point had promised that they would have a big update by the end of summer. So then people said, okay, summer's officially over. It's now fall or autumn, if you prefer. And then they started posting on, like, a Reddit community. And Atari, I guess, was a moderator on the Reddit community. And they started deleting negative comments. And then they got unmoderated, I guess. What's the term for when you're no longer a moderator? They got demoted or something.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And seems like kind of a mess. Like, they maybe don't have people even working on the thing anymore.
Wow. I mean, where do you even start?
Yeah, so someone asked if the if the hardware designer is actually part of the project or not anymore. And basically the response from Atari is, well, yeah, he works on many different projects.
Yeah. So that sounds like deflection, kind of.
Right. I mean, that's right.
And, you know, where there's smoke, there's usually fire. And there's been smoke all around this thing for over a year now.
Yeah, I mean, it's already it's more than a year past its original launch date. And my first impression was, this is not ever going to launch, or if it will, it's going to be 1% of what Atari promised it to be. Like, I think at the end of the day, they will probably deliver a box that looks like an Atari 2600 and has some Atari games preloaded, and maybe is running some kind of Android distribution where, in theory, someone could put an indie game on it if they wanted to.
I mean, really, all they had to do, like, this thing is a beefed up, Ryzen processor CPU. I think, yeah, that means it would have an AMD GPU set. So this thing is pretty powerful, like almost as powerful as a PS4. By the way, it still doesn't exist, and it's not as powerful as a PS4. But still, it looks cool. The controllers look nice. Yeah, just throw Laca on it and be done. People would be happy with that, right?
Yes.
But
I don't really know how
they
to
promised.
navigate Reddit. So I'm sitting here trying to figure out how to get to like the top of this forum and see what else is going on. But
well, I kind of have two rules. I don't really go on Reddit, and I don't read comments because I like being in a good mood.
Yeah, that's a good point. This is also why I deleted my Twitter account.
Yeah, if you want to be in a rotten mood, do either of those two things.
Yes. Yeah, I forgot that Reddit can occasionally... I'm sure there are some good Reddit communities, but my experience is only with ones that are not. And almost at the end of news here. Long-lost Nintendo 64 prototype controller discovered. So this is over on comicbook.com, which I recommend you use an ad blocker if you visit. And it's... someone has found a old prototype Nintendo 64 controller, and it's pretty cool looking. And he has some very, very, very good photos of it.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I found most interesting was how much better the analog stick looks on it.
It really does. It looks comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why they changed it. It's just... basically, it's a lot like a Nintendo 64 controller. It's like how the final product turned out. Not very different at all.
Mm-hmm.
Except the analog stick is, like, thicker. It's, like, close to the size of a PlayStation analog controller, right? Or analog stick.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty beefy. And I don't know why they then went with the thing that reminds me of those really awful joysticks that you had in the 80s for PC.
Yeah.
You know, the PC where it was a square joystick and then just like a stick with a button on top.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was terrible for action games, and that's kind of what the Nintendo 64, analog stick ends up feeling like. So yeah, and he has some really close up photos of this analog stick. What they ended up doing, what they ended up not doing, I should say, and it just looks so much better.
It's black with gray buttons, which looks pretty slick.
Yeah, which I assume, but I also assume that for like a prototype hardware, they haven't done any mold and they haven't created the molds yet, probably. So there's no color. It's just whatever they. I think all prototype controllers are pretty much black. Is what I'm trying to get at.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it also looks like they had a spot for another. Maybe they were going to have the whole Nintendo 64 logo at the top.
There's a big open space where I'm looking at my Nintendo 64 controller right now. Yeah, where the Nintendo logo goes, they almost have a plate. I was wondering if that, when I first saw it, I thought, oh, they're going to do a VMU or something in there, but there's no hardware for that. It just looks like you could put a much bigger piece of branding on there, I guess. And
also around the stick, there's not the. You didn't say this part. There's I don't think there's no. What would you call that? The 8-way lock-in parts that are around the analog stick. It doesn't have that.
Yeah.
And the connector is different. It's what is that, Cat 3? A Cat 3 connector at the end of the cable?
I didn't even look at the connector, but
I'm zoomed in right now.
Because it was probably being plugged into what do they use? A Silicon Graphics workstation, something like that. I have the Nintendo 64 SDK, and I was going to install it until I realized I literally don't have hardware or virtual machine I can run that on.
Oh, you should send that to me. I have an O2 machine. I'll literally install it, make a video.
Okay, console SDKs. I have two different Nintendo 64 SDKs. One is for OS2. That can't be right. I'll send it to you, and then you can tell me. But yeah, you need to I'm looking at I can't even. I have nothing I can run this on. Nothing. Yeah, there is a Windows. Yeah, so it has a SGI installer. There is a Windows installer, and I think there's, like I said, there's like an OS2 version of all things.
That is strange.
Yeah, I don't know why you'd want to do OS2, but anyhow, I'm going to wrap up news with some bad news for the folks at AtGames. So AtGames has got 2 different lawsuits going against them right now. Everybody is getting sued, or everybody is suing AtGames. So first off, Bandai is suing them for making a Miss Pac-Man mini arcade cabinet because they're claiming that AtGames did not properly license it. So basically, they went to Bandai, who may or may not own the rights to Miss Pac-Man, and it was rejected. And then AtGames claims they got the rights from someone else. I guess the problem is like Miss Pac-Man. There's multiple layers of rights involved because it was like a Namco game, but then someone else created the Miss Pac-Man character. So the rights are kind of spread between 2. But I think if you want to make a Miss Pac-Man game, you have to get Bandai's permission. They own Namco, right?
Yeah.
If I understand the chain of ownership here. So you would at least definitely have to get their permission. And ultimately, I guess AtGames did not, and now they're being sued. I have to look on one Miss Pac-Man mini arcade cabinet. Hold on.
And it was also part of... They did create a prototype, right? But it what they released wasn't even what they got approved, right?
Yeah, I think this might be the thing in question. I think I own the little mini Miss Pac-Man thing that the lawsuit's about. It doesn't mention Namco anywhere on it. It mentions Super Impulse Limited.
Sounds legit.
Copyright Super Impulse Limited. Maybe that's the company that made it? Wait, who is Super Impulse Limited? Yeah, that's the make. So this is not the AtGames system. You can scrub that part. That's who made this miniature cabinet. And I don't see the rights.
I think it's the bigger yellow one. The one that's like 8 or 12 inches tall, maybe? Do you have one of those?
Yeah. I don't have one of those, no. No, I've never been able to find one of those. Miss Pac-Man is like probably my favorite of the Pac-Man games. So I pretty much buy any variant of Miss Pac-Man that comes out.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then Walgreens is suing AtGames for breach of contract because of product returns. So they basically are claiming AtGames guaranteed them the rights to return product. So if you're a retailer, you buy stuff from the vendor, and then there's different conditions. And sometimes you have the right to return the products for a refund, right? And other times you don't. It just depends on the product. So Walgreens claims that it returned over 66,000 units back to AtGames, and AtGames refused to pay them back, and Walgreens says AtGames owes them $1.62 million. So this is like, Black Friday, you see all the crazy sales for these various plug-and-play systems. Oh, I did notice, speaking of the clearance section at Target, which has to come up at least once an episode, the previous, there's the new Sega Genesis Mini Classic Mixmaster Throwdown Edition, whatever. What's it called? The new Mini Sega Genesis?
Right? That's all it's called, I think.
Okay. So the last one, which came out last year, called like Sega Genesis Ultimate something something. It was an AtGames system. That's now on clearance at Target it wasn't that great of a deal. It's like $15 off. It was like a $60 thing, and now it's like $45, something.
Well, that's because you could buy the real thing, right?
Right, because this better system is out now, and that this AtGames one I remember had really, really poor reviews.
Oh, it was called the Flashback.
But it was the one,
like
but it was the bigger
stuff.
one that was in like a dark blue box and had more games. It was like their ultimate Genesis collection. Like they were really putting a lot of buzzwords on the packaging. So that was like, anyway, the point is, if for some reason you want that system, it's on clearance at Target now. this post is not sponsored by Target or Walgreens.
Yeah, it's just called, you're right, it's Sega Genesis Classic Game Console.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think AtGames has done a couple good plug-and-play systems and then a lot of kind of junky plug-and-play systems. So I guess I wouldn't be sad to see them go if this all went really badly for them.
I'm a bit surprised about the Walgreens wanting to return a bunch of stuff, because it just seems like the stuff sells itself. Like, oh, it's your, nephew's birthday and you forgot a present. Well, you can just run to Walgreens or whatever, look on the wall and find one of these things. Like, it just won't sell during the holiday season. It will sell whenever, so I don't know why they had to return these.
Yeah, I mean, Walgreens maybe just bought too many of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like Walgreens sometimes makes really terrible decisions. I mean, they were one of the companies that gave Theranos $2 billion for a product that had no testing results.
Yeah, that's fine. I forgot about that.
So it's like they maybe just go all in on things that turn out to be a bad idea. So it would not surprise me if they ordered 66,000 too many of these systems.
But still, it seems like there's 66,000 Walgreens, so just have one at each store. I'm not sticking up for AtGames at all. I'm just saying.
It's hard.
Just seems weird.
It's hard because I live near the Walgreens home office, so I live in an area where there's a Walgreens every 7 inches.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand that. I don't know if the rest of the country has a Walgreens, has the same Walgreens density that we have out here.
I feel like that's a thing everywhere.
Yeah, I just don't know if outside of Midwest it's some other chain that's really dominant.
So there's just under 10,000 Walgreens.
Okay, so there you go, 6 of these per location.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably more. Means they probably ordered 10 per location.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, want to get to some Game Club games?
Yeah. I guess I'll start since mine's listed first. UniRacers on the SNES. This game was a late release, and you were right, it was done by the people who do Grand Theft Auto. And it's a game where you just play a unicycle, and it's a kind of, would you say it's a Sonic-like game, I guess?
Yeah, I mean,
in terms of the speed.
In terms of the speed, yes. I mean, clearly it's a different game, and it's meant to be if you did a Sonic. If there was a game called Sonic Racers, it would probably turn out a lot like what was it called? UniRacers.
Yeah,
I'm all confused now. Too many things that sound the same.
Exactly. Yeah, and you race another unicycle, and you're on different tracks that. If you jump and do a trick, it gives you speed. If you wipe out, you obviously slow down. So you're rewarded for stunts. And it's also a lot of memorization because it happens so fast. You need to know. Sometimes the track changes direction. And so you really have to play a few tracks more than once to kind of get it down. And, there's a split screen mode. It wasn't rated very well back in the day. I don't know why, because to me, it's a beautiful game. I mean, these programmers, this game is so beautiful. These programmers seriously looked like they were bragging about how good they were and what they could do with the SNES. It looks like it was released in 94 here, and here meaning North America. And a lot of people don't know about it because Pixar sued them because it looked like one of their animated shorts.
Yeah.
Red Dream, was it? Yeah, Red's Dream. But I don't know how else you can make an animated unicycle look. It kind of seems unfair to me. So that's why a lot of people didn't play this game. Is I don't think they had to pay any money, but they had to stop making them. So only 300,000 were made.
Yeah. Yeah, I enjoyed the game overall. I'm not very good at it. I like there's sort of stunt track levels and then race levels. Mm-hmm. And I do better at the stunt track levels, the ones where you have like a minute to earn X number of points and stuns. So I do okay at those. The race ones I'm not particularly good at. I mean, I can see like maybe the bad reviews came because there's some places where it feels a little bit less like polished than other Super Nintendo games, and it's in little things. It's like the game itself is good, but then navigating the menus and stuff is really kind of confusing. So like you go in and it's like you get kind of this weird title screen, and then it's like pick your racer, and then there's just like 2 columns of unicycles that have names, Dave and Tara or whatever, right? Are the names of I don't know if remember those are the actual names of the unicycles, but you get
yeah.
saying. And what's the difference between these like 45 unicycles that I see on the screen right now?
That's a good point. Yeah, I had no idea other than their color.
So I'm just like, I don't know, I'll play as Dave. What difference does it make, right? And I'm still not sure what difference it makes between which unicycle. I realize this is like maybe page 1 of the manual explains all this, or maybe you press select or something instead of start and it tells you their stats. I don't know.
Mm-hmm,
but like that part, I could see someone firing that game up and just thinking like, what is this nonsense? But then when you get to the actual gameplay, it's really good. And it's like a very advanced, like you said, it's a very advanced game technically for the Super Nintendo.
Mm-hmm. I mean, even the intro screen and all that just looks incredible.
Yeah.
Like Donkey Kong Country, not Donkey Kong Country-esque, but up there in caliber with, I have 0 retro achievements for this because, I mean, I only played it for a few days, but like get bronze on every level, get silver on every level, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying to see if there's any 4 specific players, like, Dave or Mike or whoever, whatever they're called.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. I said, it just was like.
One of them is, we may have to Google this. I'm so glad I looked at this. One achievement is try entering your name as Sega, Sonic, or Satan. I wonder if that does something. Here, let me Google
Must do
this.
something, yeah. I always like when you look at the credits for the game studio here, the game developers, that's like I said, it's very funny. It's like Lemmings, Holiday Lemmings, UniRacers, Grand Theft Auto. Like, just such a huge jump,
Yeah, yeah.
But I feel like all these early games they made were, they probably built up a big library of, things to optimize games and, different mechanics and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
There are certain names that you're not allowed to use. Face, head, ball. I love that all those are one of them. And then Sonic, Sega, and Satan. You're just not allowed anything occult related.
Yeah, that had to be a Nintendo rule.
Yeah.
Because obviously, I mean, remember, these guys then went on to make Grand Theft Auto. Like, this is not their personal morality.
That is so great. I love that's a funny achievement too. We're not going to talk about achievements in every episode, but It's a new thing to me, so kind of fresh in my mind.
I will probably never sign up for retro achievements because I don't care, and it doesn't retroactively know things I achieved in the 90s. So
yeah,
no
yeah.
use to me. Like, I'm not going back and playing through games just to get on the scoreboard. As cool as much as I like the idea, I can't do it.
I should say that Nintendo Power ranked this as the 8th best SNES game of 94. Okay, not ever. And IGN ranked this as the 98th best game for the system.
That's still 8th best game of 94 on Super Nintendo is still pretty good. That's, if you think about it, that's pretty good. For that era, I mean, that was really like peak Super Nintendo library.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But yeah, not much more to say about that game. Let's go on to yours.
So I went with PaRappa the Rapper, a game I've been playing on the PlayStation Classic. I actually own a couple versions of this. In addition to like PlayStation, I also have the PSP version for some reason. I must have gotten it cheap. I don't know.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And yeah, this is like an early rhythm game. So it mixes between like this kind of crazy comic story, right, where you're PaRappa and you're trying to win over the girl, and you have to overcome a series of challenges to do that, like learning self-defense and learning how to drive a car and then earning money after you crash the car, that kind of stuff.
Mm.
And then the games are all, rhythm games. So you're paired up with the computer player. They rap a few lines of a song, and then you have to like hit the buttons in rhythm to make PaRappa rap the same lines back. And if you miss, the speech is really stuttered and sounds kind of funny.
Yeah.
And that's how you advance through the game. It's not, I don't know, whether 5 stages, something like that. It's not a very long game. But it's really difficult. Like when I went back and played this game, I forgot just how difficult some of these levels are. And the timing is really unforgiving. So you have to have, at least on normal, there's like normal difficulty and easy. And easy I can kind of barely get through.
Mm-hmm. Me
but
too.
Normal right now, I'm just like, whoa, how did I play this in the 90s? Did I just drink a lot of Jolt or something? And got through, because this was really more difficult than I remember. But it's fun, and it's kind of funny. And to me, it's like one of the most PlayStation games you can make. Like, there are certain games that, what I'm saying? Like, they could not exist at any other time period on any other system. Like, PaRappa the Rapper today would not make any sense.
No, and there was also no reason for this game to be 3D at all.
Yeah.
No reason at all.
Yeah. So, kind of a cool, fun game. Not very deep, but it is funny. And like I said, my youngest kid, at least, thought it was a pretty funny game. She got through the first 3 stages.
Is she enjoying it?
Oh, yeah. 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 Mostly it's the story. She thinks the story is pretty funny.
I'll tell you that, is he a frog? The kind of reggae one, reggae episode.
The reggae frog.
That one is impossible.
See, that's weird, because like that one I thought was pretty easy because there's only one button in most of the raps on that level.
Yeah.
It's fast. Like you have to hit the buttons fast,
yeah.
but you don't have to think about which button do I need to hit next. Mm-hmm, and I think I get tripped up more when there's a lot of button changes than when, it's just, oh, like, or circle, whatever. I guess Sony doesn't want you to call.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I did not know that there is a PS4 remake of PaRappa the Rapper, but maybe it's a Japan exclusive.
I think I have that. I think it's on PSN.
Oh, you think it's a regular one too? Okay.
Yep.
Huh. Well,
I've never played the sequel either.
Yeah, I haven't played the sequel. No, I wasn't that much. I mean, I liked it, but not enough to go track down every variant of it. Only 2 variants. That's the number. That's the max number of PaRappa the Rapper variants. And again, it's just such a period. It's just such, PaRappa's look in the style of the game. None of that can exist outside of 1996.
Yeah. I mean, I remember. I still own this game. I remember the first day I went over to my buddy's house and he had it, and I was just like, oh, I guess I need to own this. It's just funny. It's one of those games you could turn on and play for a little bit. You could play for a long time, 5 minutes. It doesn't really matter.
And you can just watch like a playthrough for half an hour or whatever. And I guess there's not are there speed runs, because there's only like one way to play through the game, right?
I don't think there are. Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that. So I tried to find videos of this and I couldn't. But apparently, so there's 4 different rap levels, and like good is like the 3rd level, and that's kind of 100%. But you could get cool, which is a higher level, and apparently you could kind of riff between when you're supposed to be hitting buttons. But anytime I tried that, I would just get marked down. Apparently, I don't have any PlayStation rapping skills. Do you know anything about that?
I do not.
It's something I think it was literally in the manual. And if I remember right. And if any listeners know anything about this or are just like preternatural at this game, please write us, because I need to be schooled in this, and there's not much online about it.
Yeah, according to looking at speedrun leaderboards, it's about 17 minutes is pretty much the peak time. I think there's like a sort of theoretical max, like unless there's some glitch, you can't do under 17 minutes. Look like 17:04:66 is the official record.
That's so strange. I don't know how you would do that. I mean, can you skip all the in-between scenes, maybe?
Yeah, I didn't study ahead and like read what the techniques are for speedrunning it. Yeah, I think other than faster PlayStation 1 drive, I don't know how you get through the game any faster. You want to tease what our next games are going to be and how people can talk about them?
Sure, yeah. So I'll start with the email address. Please write us email@retrogameclub.net. We've actually jumped in listenership a lot, so please, if you're first time listening, if you're anything, playing any games we're not talking about, doing anything retro related, have comments on what we are playing and you're playing with us, please email us at email@retrogameclub.net.
And we're always happy to talk about games that we talked about in the past too, so don't feel like
totally, yes. So
if you're
there's
catching up on old episodes,
yeah, write about any of them. Thank you for reminding me on that. And my next game is Haunting! Starring Poltergeist on the Genesis.
That's a really funny game.
Yeah. yeah. I've only seen video of it, so I'm excited to actually try it.
Yeah, I've played it, so I'll be able to talk about that. And I have that's another one. I have a version of it that runs on PSP. But anyhow, I'm gonna do. This is a listener request, and I've never played this game, or if I have, it's only been a very, very small amount, and that is Monster in My Pocket. So this is a Konami game that's on the NES, and I maybe played it a little bit, but I'm going to try it this week. I think it's good to help get in the Halloween spirit. Yeah, so anyhow, I think I've played it, but maybe I'm mentally confusing it with Monster Party. I'll find out when I play it. Monster Party, another NES game. Not the game I'm picking, though. I'm picking Monster in My Pocket. And going over some listener feedback, Zach wanted to talk about the Switch remake of Link's Awakening in the slowdown. He says he's been experiencing a lot of slowdown, especially like Mabe Village and Eastern Tall Mountains. And he has the original Switch, got it shortly after release, and he's wondering if you're playing it in docked mode, and maybe that's why you're not seeing slowdown.
I'm only in dock mode right now, so okay. That might be it.
So when I said I haven't seen a slowdown, like he describes the issue as it being kind of like jittery and frame dropping, and I really haven't seen that. I will say, like in the village, like I just noticed this yesterday. I went to do the fishing mini game, which, by the way, I don't like the fishing mini game, and I'm not going to play it anymore. The fishing mini game, but like when it transitioned back from me walking from the fishing pond into the village, there was kind of like a second pause, almost like it was loading. If that makes sense. And I just figured it was like, oh, well, I'm transitioning scenes, and sometimes that happens. So I did notice that, but in the mountains, I haven't noticed anything, even in the part where there's like falling boulders, which I guess is the western side of the mountains.
I've heard other podcasts mention that it's when there's a lot of enemies on the screen.
Okay.
But again, I haven't seen any of that. I'm only in dock mode, and the Switch Lite does have a more efficient CPU, GPU, so I don't know if that helps, but I have listened, to other podcasts who are playing on the Switch Lite, and I don't know. Maybe I just don't want to see it or something.
Maybe, yeah. Like I said, I haven't really noticed anything other than that one little spot. So I don't know.
But that is that's our only comment. But we literally recorded a few days ago, so I'm sure we'll get more feedback next time. Please write us email@retrogameclub.net. And and then that moves us to our topic of the episode, right?
Yes.
And yeah, so our topic of this episode is really collecting in general. So my buddy Randy just opened up a toy store called KnerdOut. He also is the host of a YouTube channel called KnerdOut. And his channel is spelled NerdOut with a K. So KNERDOUT. Definitely check it out. It's a funny toy collecting show. But we're going to be focused, obviously, on video game collecting. And Hugh, I'm sure you'll share a lot of your estate and garage sale shenanigans.
Yeah. I've got a few interesting finds throughout the years.
So yeah, and we'll get right into that. All right, we're here interviewing Randy from NerdOut Podcast and NerdOut Toy Store in Oak Park, Michigan. And for our listeners, just in case this sounds a bit different, it's recorded at a different time and whole different setup. So sorry if the audio is different, but welcome, Randy.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Randy has the NerdOut Podcast, which focuses on toy collecting, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
I'd say it verges. The webcast is Nerd Out with a K, silent K. I think we focus primarily on like toys and action figures, but we do branch off into movies and comic books. We pretty much go wherever our minds take us at wherever point we are. But we always start off usually reviewing an action figure or something of that nature, and then it spirals out of control.
Yeah, and then you end up owning a toy store.
Yeah, that is spiraling out of control.
But so, Hugh and I thought it'd be fun to interview you for this show because all summer long, really garage sale season, we're collecting video games and stuff, and you're collecting toys, garage sales, estate sales, shows, whatever, and so we thought it'd be kind of a good crossover.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, video games and toys are one and the same, I'd say,
Pretty
right?
much,
or
yeah.
is that considered sacrilegious to call video games toys? Is that like against the video game code?
I don't think so.
No, I would go with toy. I think that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, there'll be some types. And the reality is the community has some people who get very sensitive about really, really trivial things. And I can see that being one of them. But go ahead.
But they were sold at Toys R Us.
Right, that's true. And not only sold. Do you remember back in the 80s and 90s with the first Nintendo when Toys R Us had the windowed glass screen that you had to like take your ticket up to the counter and then get the game from the counter?
Yeah, man.
That was serious. You knew you were in for a ride when that happened.
Yeah, it wasn't as serious as like service merchandise.
Oh no, service merchandise. You had to like sign away your life.
Yeah. I never bought a toy or anything there.
I got busted shoplifting G.I. Joes and service merchandise.
So you're the reason.
Yeah, it was very traumatic. But service merchandise had a whole when you picked up your product, it was on like a conveyor belt. It was serious.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, you couldn't handle anything.
And now I would say that video games are so popular that pretty much the future of action figures is almost dependent on video game characters, because kids don't play with action figures really unless they're video game related.
Well, I see Fortnite stuff everywhere.
Yeah. There's I think there's both McFarlane Toys and Jazzwares both do action figures for that. And I don't know how they get away with having the like multi-company, distributor. I think that would be almost a conflict of interest. But it's so popular that they probably don't even care and will do whatever they have to do.
So is there anything selling right now you think is going to be worth money in the future?
Worth money? Well, I always say buy what you enjoy. But I would say, honestly, I'd say the Fortnite figures. Jazzware's done a really nice job as far as going deep into the line. I think there's like a good 30 different characters already. And as that goes, I think the popularity, like I think that'll be a highly collected toy line 10, 15 years from now.
Huh. Surprised you said that.
Why is that?
Yeah. I don't know, Fortnite,
I like Fortnite. Actually, I play Fortnite.
I know.
Is that also against the video game code to like that?
Well, Yeah, it's kind of hard because like I don't know how true this is, but it seems like things that are really popular and have millions of toys produced maybe aren't worth a ton years later. And I guess you can clarify
That is true.
that things that no one really expected to be successful, or something that was obscure or limited print or whatever, tends to be worth more than things that you can just buy at Walmart for a couple bucks.
I agree with you. It usually goes one of either way. It goes either the collectors clamor over things that they didn't buy or weren't highly produced, or the opposite, where you have Star Wars, where everyone bought it, so everyone wants it. So it can go either way. Is it like you guys are obviously you guys are more well versed in video games than me, and my knowledge is pretty limited. But is there a video game snobbery where you?
Oh yeah.
Oh, there is. Okay,
Oh.
so like sometimes what is the game that is currently popular or whatever that you guys would poo as being like, a video game snob would kind of snub.
I don't think there's one specific one.
All right, what game now that you look down upon someone for playing?
Literally
Okay.
none. But I think that there's people my age who want to, re-experience the Super Nintendo and the Nintendo, but when younger people start talking about it, they expect them to know everything. And these kids didn't grow up with it. And so I think some snobbery comes from that.
Right, just the know-it-all snobbery. You were gonna mention one.
Yeah, well, you know what it is that in the video game community, there's a lot of snobbery or looking down upon casual games or like iPhone, Android games.
Okay.
Those are, I think, easily the most looked down upon. I personally don't care. Play whatever you like to play. Like, doesn't bother me. Why should I be bothered because someone else likes a game? It's kind of silly. But there's a lot of outright anger directed at casual games.
Yeah. But is there what was I going to say? Is there a secret to getting like good prices on stuff, or is it always just right place, right time? I mean, like vintage.
Are you looking
stuff,
for vintage
retro.
stuff?
Yeah.
Vintage stuff is truly like just knowing your market. And as you were mentioning, like some of the more obscure stuff that most collectors wouldn't know, or like if you're at a flea market, like everyone knows when they have a bin of Star Wars figures, they generally know Star Wars figures, but it's those like rare, obscure toys that are sitting in the dollar bins that if you're educated enough, that's when you can score. But I always say buy what you like.
Yeah, you've sent me a few pictures of video game stuff when you were out, and I'm just like, nah.
Right. It's the same thing. It's like people know I collect action figures, so they'll be like, "Oh, I went to a place that had action figures," and then they'll take a picture of some Stargate figures or something. I don't know. No disrespect to Stargate figures, but just something I'm not interested in. And I'm sure it's the same way with you.
Yeah.
Like I'll see like a cool vintage arcade and I'll be like, oh, Rob will want this because it's old and video games.
Yeah.
And there's sort of like an analogy I would think of is like you'll see a box of games somewhere that are maybe cheap, kind of undesirable games. You'll see a box of Sega Master System games for $1 a piece, and there are some really great Sega Master System games, but then there's a lot of, for lack of a better term, just kind of shovelware. And the kind of the funny thing is there's like one or two super, super rare Sega Master System games like James Buster Douglas Boxing that sell for hundreds and hundreds of dollars, if not thousands. And yeah, it's pretty hard to tell the difference. I can imagine 100 people walk by a box of Master System games and say, oh, that was that other system that lost to Nintendo. I don't care about that.
See, I just had a buddy who picked up some vintage Nintendo games, and there was his first Nintendo, DuckTales 2. And it ended up being like $100 game.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't remember DuckTales 2, but I certainly remember DuckTales 1. Actually, I remember that was a pretty solid game.
It's a great game.
Yeah.
Good soundtrack.
Yeah.
I imagine
Buster Douglas Boxing is a terrible game.
It was super popular, though. The fact that Buster Douglas, he had literally 15 minutes of fame, but big enough where he had a game all to himself.
Well, he lost before the game came out, so Sega rebranded the box as, what was it, Sega Classics or Greatest Hits?
Greatest Hits. Yeah, they ended up rebranding it, but it was, I think originally they had planned to do a different boxer, and then Buster Douglas won the title, and then they produced the game. It was a remake of an arcade game. You know, it wasn't like they developed this new IP. They took an existing arcade game and slapped Buster Douglas on it. And then it's true, he lost the title right before the game was released.
That's hilarious.
And in the case of the Master System version, it was also released after the Genesis was already out. So just nobody bought it, and that made it rare. So in the toy world, is there something like that? Like a toy that is objectively awful? Like ugly or not useful as a toy or bad in some other way, but somehow is worth a ton of money?
I mean, there's a lot of things that I would be willing to say are terrible that are worth money. I can't. I'm trying to think of a toy line that I particularly am not into. It's kind of caught me on the spot, but I have to give that one some thought. I mean, I think action figures can often be generational too. Like I'm not really into Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, even though I do respect it somewhat. But like the kids from that generation love it, and therefore, even though I don't really connect with something like that, again, the same thing with what you were saying with video games. It's like whatever someone connects with is what they connect with. It's kind of hard to judge them for it, but I can't think of a line that like is truly objective. Sometimes actually the uglier the toy, sometimes that will draw in value.
Yeah.
Like I like really weird like knockoff action figures, like some of the old Masters of the Universe knockoff figures, which if for those who don't know, like bootleg figures that came from like, you know, unlicensed companies and they were made to look like He-Man figures. Mm-hmm. They made some really, really weird looking action figures. And sometimes that appeals to me because it's so bizarre and ugly.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm looking at pictures of them right now. I wasn't aware of I mean, I knew these existed, but I hadn't really looked at them before.
Oh, yeah. Look at some of the Fantasy Warriors and some really wacky stuff out there.
Unlike most toy people, I'm not into Transformers, and here's why. I like the idea of Transformers, and I like how they look as robots. But when you're, messing with them or whatever, A, they break easy. B, so you don't want any of your friends to touch them. B, because they have to be a robot and a machine, they're not great at being either.
So you feel they're compromised.
Totally. Yeah.
See, I respect that point if you're talking about a Transformer from like 1987. But some of the stuff they're doing now, mostly high-end Japanese stuff, is like just absolutely groundbreaking engineering wise, where they can make both the robot and the vehicle look incredible and articulated. But again, that's like getting into more like higher end and fantastic.
Yeah, that's not a toy you're buying to play with it, right? And that's the thing I noticed now is that it's like they don't make. I think we started out talking about how kids don't, kids prefer to play video games over toys nowadays. And yeah, most of the toys, when you go to the toy section, it's either kind of geared at really, really little kids, or it's stuff that the person buying it is not going to open the box.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was actually very common in the 1990s. But I'll be honest with you, I think the action figure collector has kind of come full circle, or at least adult action figure collector, where I think that the adult collector has embraced the opening of a toy and getting the enjoyment out of it. But that's at least from my experience. I think there are definitely mint on card collectors or package collectors, but I don't think it's quite like it was in the 1990s where they were putting stamps that said collector's edition, and people would like save it forever, and then there's thousands and thousands and thousands of them on the card.
See, it's come full circle now because now they do that with video games. There's limited run games. Mm-hmm. There's
reprints of classic games.
Yeah.
What's now again, I'm very ignorant on video games. What's the format of a video game now? Because there's cartridge, disc, and then now pretty much download, right? Mm-hmm. So does that eliminate? Clearly those GameStop stores are really hurting. Is that the physical need for the game becoming extinct?
Yeah, it is. I mean, the only system that really requires a physical game at this point is like the Switch, because Nintendo still loves cartridges after all these years. I know they went to CD format for a while, but they're back to being cartridges, and really they're essentially just SD cards. And they're not literally SD cards, but they're essentially SD cards. But the thing is, like especially with like PlayStation 4 and Xbox, you buy the disc and then you insert it, and then it says, "Oh, I have to download 160 gig of updates." So you end up installing the whole game to your hard drive anyways. So the CD is really just like copy protection at that point.
Gotcha.
That's about it. So there's almost no need to own the CD anymore because the whole game's on your hard drive regardless.
Other than preservation.
Right. People are becoming nostalgic for video games. I'm finding that people are interested in the vintage games just to own it and have that physical item. So, like, I'm sure you guys have... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You guys have probably covered this, but, like, you know, you got Nintendo, Sega, Xbox, PlayStation. Like, what is your preferred platform? Do you guys have, like... Are you guys snobby about... I'm very interested in this... Does one system take precedence for you guys or have more meaning or more value than all the other systems?
I'll go first. For me, it's not so much a system as an era. Like for me, the 16-bit era, like between 91 and 95, kind of that time frame.
Is that like TurboGrafx 16 Genesis?
Yeah,
okay.
TurboGrafx 16 Genesis, Super Nintendo. Like I could survive on just those three systems if I had to.
That's awesome.
And ask me to pick one, like there's really great advantages to each system and really great like exclusive games on each system. So it's hard to pick one as the absolute favorite. But that whole era, that span where 16-bit games were dominant and like 16-bit style RPGs, that kind of stuff, that's really my sweet spot with games.
What about you, Rob?
Yeah, I'm close there. Mine is NES and TurboGrafx, just because those are I started with Atari, but going back to some of those don't really stand up.
Right.
But I mean, and it's just because that's, where my nostalgia is. And that's why, like, Hugh and I, anytime like a new Zelda game comes out, we're gonna play it. It's gonna happen. And
that era was such a big jump too, because you went from like a Atari 2600 or Atari 7800, and then you really did jump Nintendo and then Nintendo to Genesis or whatever, Super Nintendo. That was such a jump in just overall change of like graphics and aesthetic and gameplay.
Oh yeah.
It was the first time you had games that actually kind of looked like the arcade system. So Atari and NES, they had arcade conversions, and sometimes they played like the arcade game, but you weren't really fooling anyone. Joust on Atari 2600 did not look like Joust in the arcade.
Right.
Joust on the NES looked a little bit better, but then Sega Genesis, you were basically playing the same game you had in the arcade.
And then you had the rich friend who had the Neo Geo. You remember the Neo Geo?
Oh, yeah, man.
Yeah.
But I didn't have that rich friend.
No, I knew the rich friend, but I never got to get to the rich friend's house to play.
Well, Hugh, how many times did you sell those at the game store?
The Neo Geo? 0. We didn't carry it.
Oh.
What game store was that?
So before I went back to college, I was working at an electronics boutique store in the Chicago area. And it was right in the middle. It was 16-bit, early 32-bit era. I left to go back to school just before the Nintendo 64 came out. So I got to, enjoy things like PlayStation launch and Saturn launch and both the launch and discontinuation of the Sega CD, 32X, and Jaguar.
Jaguar.
Yeah.
Jaguar was Atari's last attempt, right? To like jump into that era.
Well, they're releasing another one right now.
Are they really?
Yeah.
So Atari,
they may be releasing a new system, correct?
Yeah.
how does Atari exist? Because I remember in Blade Runner 2049, they had an Atari presence. So how does Atari exist as a company? Is it pretty much software? Or, obviously you guys are saying that they're now making a system.
No, it's really an IP holding company.
But there's two. Bandai owns part of it. Bandai.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Right. Most of the things that everyone thinks of as Atari are owned by, the Atari holding company. And that, like this new Atari system is, Atari putting their name on a piece of Android hardware.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Right. They have 4 employees or something. It's not like a real company.
Using the branding to hook people into the nostalgia and pretty much.
If they don't even release their products, so they have like 200 or whatever of my dollars right now, and who knows if I'm ever going to get a system out of it.
You're going to get something. I don't know what, but something. It's going to be like a Samsung Galaxy 4 crammed inside an Atari case. Hey, here's a weird toy collecting question. So, like, when you look for classic, like, rare games on eBay, there's a ton of counterfeits in reproduction. Sometimes they're very blunt that it's a reproduction or counterfeit. Other times, you just kind of know by looking at it that it's not right. Is that a problem in the toy community? Like classic toys that are counterfeited?
It's a huge problem, but it's more of a problem not with vintage toys as it is with like current modern toys. Like a lot of I don't want to just assume it's China, but that's where a lot of the manufacturing is. They sometimes will overrun a production, and then they'll take the overrun, and people will sell it loose and cheaper. So that's becoming a big problem, and there is like a lot of counterfeit or knockoff, mostly for new products. There's not a whole lot with vintage. There was a period of time, maybe over the last 10 years, where there was a lot of counterfeit Generation 1, which is the original Transformers. There was a lot of counterfeit Transformers, and they got to a point where they looked really identical, where you had to be really knowledgeable of the product, or you could easily get fooled into buying counterfeit.
But what about, this is a real like niche example. Like I know from going to yard sales and stuff, you can find like loose Darth Vader figures with no cape pretty much everywhere because they made.
Oh, okay. So you're talking about like accessories?
Yeah, I was wondering also. I mean, I actually like the story there about the current gen counterfeit toys. But did you also get cases where like someone will get like a loose Darth Vader figure and then make their own vinyl cape and try and pass it off as a complete figure?
Yeah, actually, here's a little trick for any collectors out there or people who might have bought a box of Star Wars figures and weapons. If you want to know if your weapon is counterfeit, I believe if it's counterfeit, you put it in water and it'll float. There's something about the weight or something. Huh. That's a very common. Yeah, it's actually you can research it on the Google, and you'll find some pretty interesting articles about how to pull out counterfeits. And I think a lot of it is if they floats, it's a counterfeit. It's either that or it's vice versa. Also shades of colors, an easy way. But again, you really got to do your homework.
With games, you have to sometimes open up the cartridge and know what the chip is supposed to look like. That's how crazy it is.
So with counterfeit games, will they produce a game and then only provide like part of the game, or will they go through the whole process and give you all the components where you can actually play the game?
Yeah, it's usually a functioning cartridge. I mean, I don't know all the techniques, but I believe the most common one is like you take a cartridge for a cheap game. So you take Madden Football 95 or something, and then you carefully heat gun off the sticker because the stickers peel off with heat pretty easily. Print your own sticker for the other game, and then you can just buy like essentially a flash card that looks, I mean, if you just look at the cartridge on the outside, it looks like just a regular pinout, and then inside it's actually running a repro of the game.
Wow, that's I love how, like, I don't love it, but it seems like so much work to do, like the counterfeit. People really go through great lengths. Have they ever made like a counterfeit game like that had like where you don't know it's a counterfeit and then you play the game and then they have some sort of like ha 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 graphic or something like that, like a trick?
Yeah, there were some Nintendo figured out some copy protection scheme for a few of their games. Was it Earthbound maybe, where like the difficulty would just get radically increased if you were playing a counterfeit version?
Yeah, you could never beat it somehow.
Because it basically turned the game impossible after a while. Because it had some chip on the hardware to tell the difference between whether it was real or fake. Because that was around the time when you started to get the overruns, and Nintendo started manufacturing more out of China and Taiwan, and suddenly they were getting counterfeit games in the market.
This week, one of our Game Club games is Monsters in My Pocket.
Oh, okay.
And I remember I texted you that, and you sent me back a picture of a bucket full.
I was literally sitting at my counter at my store, and right next to me was a huge bin of Monster in My Pocket toys.
So I guess I missed out on those. I must have been a teen or something when they came out. What is Monster in My Pocket, other than miniature monster figures?
Yeah, Monster in My Pocket is like, okay, do you remember Muscle? millions of unusual creatures lurking everywhere. So Monster in My Pocket was like, I think it was 1989, 1990, and it was like the end of the era of the 80s and launching into the 90s. And it was basically just little like rubber 2-inch monster figures, and you could get packs of, I think it was like packs of 5, packs of 10, and something of that nature. They were produced by Matchbox, and they were sort of like in that era of like not quite 80s and not quite 90s yet. So I guess they had some success, but not like Muscle did.
Yeah, that's a video game too. I think for
That's
NES.
right.
Yeah,
I don't think I've ever played them. Now I haven't played Monster in My Pocket. Is that considered a good game?
I think it is.
Yeah, actually, I just played. I don't think it's this episode that it's going to be in. It's the next one. I think we're going to be talking about, if I remember the chronology. But I did play it. It's kind of difficult, but it's a standard kind of NES platformer. It's a later release, so the graphics are really, really good. I'd say some of the better graphics on the system. I just found the game to be really tough.
Yeah.
Wasn't the Muscle game also very tough?
I think the Muscle game is really bad.
Okay.
Right?
I think you're right.
But
I think it's
bad
pretty
is what I
valuable,
remember.
though. I think it's got some
I
collector.
believe so, because I don't own that one, and I have a pretty big NES collection.
Nice.
I would say, like, in terms of toys that crossed over to video games and did it really well, I think Micro Machines is probably the best example.
I didn't even know they had a Micro Machine game.
There's a whole series.
Yeah.
They're really good too.
Wow, I'm trying to
just standard kind of overhead racing games. Some of them were unlicensed, right? So they were developed and were put on, not official NES or Sega Genesis cartridges, which is maybe why they aren't as well known. But they play great. I mean, they got car games, boat games. No Micro Machine Star Wars, unfortunately, but those turned out really good. It's hard for me to think of a toy to video game conversion that went better.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of other, like, I can definitely go from video game to toy lines, but I'm trying to think of some more action figure or toy lines that were
There
turned
was
into games.
He-Man on the Intellivision.
Okay, yeah, that's going way back. You're
It's
right.
really
You're right.
That's bad, yeah. I wasn't sure whether or not you counted Lego Lego's obviously a toy, but there's a bunch of games that are Lego branded, and most of those are pretty good too. But it's not like a specific. I was trying to think of like a figure, but yeah, you had He-Man, which of course was a cartoon, or was a cartoon created to sell the toy? That was
No. Actually, the toy line was created first, and at the time they had a lot of they had certain laws where they could not create an animated series to sell toys. But I think Masters of the Universe was the first post-law cartoon. So as soon as the law was changed, they immediately made a Masters of the Universe cartoon. So that benefited from the change of law.
Was Masters? What's the company that made that?
Filmation or
No,
Mattel? Mattel.
So, if I remember right, and I'm sure listeners are gonna write in and correct me, I think Trip Hawkins was running Mattel at the time. Then he went on to do Flintstone Vitamins, then Matchbox, and then
Who's Trip Hawkins?
and then he was the CEO of Sega of America, who made the Genesis popular.
No, you're mixing. You're thinking of Tom Kalinske, I think.
Tom Kalinske,
Trip
yeah,
Hawkins was the
Tom
founder.
Kalinske, I'm talking about, yeah.
Trip
Hawkins
Hawkins was the founder of Electronic Arts.
Oh, wow.
Sorry,
Is that his real
Yeah.
name? That's like a spy movie name.
So yes, all listeners, I was thinking of Tom Kalinske. Thank you. We just saved us a bunch of email hate there.
But yeah, Tom Kalinske is just a guy who bounced between various forms of entertainment. I mean, getting back to our video games toys, well, yeah, I mean, it was a toy executive that kind of made Sega into a household name.
He already knew. Oh, he had all the relationships at Toys R Us and Walmart and all those places. Sears was a big one back then.
I mean, they must have done a G.I. Joe video game, but I don't remember it being significant enough. It was probably just, a crappy game and branded G.I. Joe.
Yeah. Some of the games start off that way. Yeah, like there's something completely different, and then the developer picks up a license, and they adapt this terrible game that they had into something, something licensed.
Right.
Definitely, there's some of the G.I. Joe games definitely feel like that.
One of the worst toy to video game conversions is Army Ants
Wow, they have an Army Ants
for
game.
PlayStation 1. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I
Those
wanna,
are cool toys.
Oh yeah, I definitely. I was just sorting through a whole bunch of Army Ants. That's wild.
Now you know what to get me for my birthday.
Army Ants?
Yeah.
Come on into the shop when it opens. I have a whole bunch of them for you.
That's awesome.
So what's the one video game that or character that if they were to make that they have not made an action figure for, that if they made an action figure, you would immediately go out and get it, even though you might not be an action figure collector?
Yeah.
Oh, I know Rob's already. He's gonna say the goose from Untitled Goose Game.
Oh, I don't even know what
get an
that
action
is.
figure soon.
That's a new one. Yeah, it's just a goose. You're just a hole goose running around terrorizing the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And let's say something like, from more your youth, like 80s.
Bonk?
Yeah.
Bonk? I don't think... Did they make a Bonk one?
Yeah, if they did, it was Japan only. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a Bonk figure in Japan, but I'm not aware of one. Like, there weren't Shinobi figures either. That would be kind of a cool one.
There was a Shinobi figure, I think, later on, but it was like post. Yeah, I think it was like NECA or something like that, like later on. I think they made a Strider figure.
I was going to say Strider.
But I think he was part of like the X-Men line. I always wanted a Karnov. Remember Karnov, that game Karnov? And action figures for the Championship Wrestling for Nintendo, particularly the guy with the star on his face.
I love that game.
I love that game too.
Yeah, that seems like something you could probably get away with making now. I could definitely see.
Are you looking at
NES
your
Pro
wall
Wrestling
to see?
figures working out?
Do you have any ideas?
Yeah, I mean, you shot off a whole bunch there, but I would keep going back to the Genesis. I was thinking like a Streets of Rage collection would be pretty cool. They made a few weird ones, like they made a Crazy Tack, they made Crazy Taxi toys, they made Mortal Kombat toys. They made Street Fighter toys, which I really regret not buying back in the day.
Yeah, actually, Street Fighter, they're in Japan, Bandai Toys does a line called SH Figuarts, and they're like some higher end figures, and they do a Street Fighter figure line, and it's fantastic. And they just came out with Vega, who to me was the coolest of all the Street Fighter characters, looks wise. I'm not saying he was the best fighter, but he was the coolest looking.
I think part of that was because when you finally got to him and you were in the arcade, you couldn't. Now this guy has a weapon. Like,
he had a claw. He had a mask.
Yeah.
You can't beat that.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, and the game we talked about recently, Burger Time. You could definitely get some good toys out of that.
Yeah, definitely.
You get a whole set with like the levels and all that stuff.
Double Dragon. They did make toys for Double Dragon, but
they
were
did?
but they were more based on the cartoon, which
even...
it was actually, I think I remember it being a pretty fun cartoon at the time. Bad Dudes, but I guess that would be Bad Dudes.
As long as Captain Louie isn't part of any of those cartoons.
So did they make Double Dragon toys when the movie came out?
No, it was either post movie or pre-movie. They did an animated series. It was who was Double Dragon? Jean-Claude Van Damme? No, that was Street Fighter, right?
That was Street Fighter.
I'm trying to think of which one was Double Dragon. Was it just two generic dudes?
Yeah, I can picture them, but I can't tell you their names.
Me too.
Double actors.
Double Dragon, they created a whole cartoon for. It was, and like I said, I think I remember it being. I think Galoob made the toys, and it was a pretty entertaining cartoon. But I think it steered a little. It exaggerated it wasn't very loyal to the game. Yeah,
Bad Dudes would be a good one.
Gauntlet. Did Gauntlet have interesting enough characters?
I don't think there's too generic. How about Bubble Bobble? There's gotta be
Dig Dug.
Yeah, I've seen Bubble Bobble. Maybe not toys, but like make your own pixel art Bubble Bobble things.
Really?
Yeah.
I think
like a beater set for Bubble Bobble. I mean, that's another thing that's big with, of course, in games is you can buy these little pre-made sets to make like bead models of your favorite games.
Huh. I think it'd be really cool if, obviously, it'd be very difficult because all these characters are owned by different companies, but to just do a toy line where they basically make one or two main characters from all these popular games and have them all the same sort of scale and put them all together. you could just go crazy with it. I mean, obviously you
Which
have
aren't Funko Pop.
Real, more like action figure, not just big-headed toys on little bodies.
Well, if Funko Pop could do it, another company could do something different.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Well, there's this series called Super 7. They do a series called Reaction Figures, and they're done in the style of the 5-point articulation figures of like the late 70s and early 80s, sort of like Star Wars, and they've been getting different kind of license where they're mixing different toy lines and all in the same scale and things. They could get away with something like that. They did Ghosts and Goblins figures.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
They're really cool.
So does his armor come off so he's running around in his underwear?
Actually, they make two versions. They make one of them with his just underwear. Actually, I have it. I'll send you a picture. They have him just his underwear and I think his helmet, and then one where he's like fully armored. They're really cool, actually. They're fun.
Yeah, I was going to talk more about... I can always talk more about Star Wars figures. My wife has a pretty big collection, but you'd mentioned how like there was this craze in the 90s of carded figures coming back, right? And yeah, we have a pretty good-sized collection of like the 97, 98 Star Wars figures. And those are things you see pretty much everywhere, except for, I guess, a few that must be somewhat rare.
Yeah, they were heavily collected by adults and collectors and people who were speculating because people felt, I think it was like 94, 95 or to like the late 90s, I think people were all feeling that regret of selling off their childhood Star Wars figures, and the Star Wars figures in the 80s were becoming so valuable that when these 90s figures came out, everyone was jumping on it. And they were all keeping them in the package and putting them in the boxes and storing them away and thinking that they were going to put themselves through college. But everybody has them, and now you could find most of them for $3 to $5 a piece. But there are a few that still sell pretty well, and I guess also as the kids from the 90s are getting older, they're becoming nostalgic for this series now.
Yeah.
So it does increase their value and increase the collectability of them. And then some of those first figures from that 90s Star Wars figures, they were pretty interesting. They were really ripped. I mean, Luke Skywalker had He-Man sized muscles. So now they have they're pretty ridiculous, but almost to the point where they have a kitschy appeal to them as well.
So and then they'd sell the sets that like recreated scenes from the movies and those sorts of things too.
Yeah, the cinema scenes and things like that.
Is your wife still collecting? Is she getting the newer ones?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, she doesn't buy any of the newer stuff, but she's really, anytime we can find like classic Star Wars stuff. I mean, occasionally at garage sales, you will find, I found like a boxed Hoth set for $3 because it was at a estate sale in the basement in a stack of boxes that was all otherwise board games and puzzles. Right. And someone just, didn't know what they had. So I got that for a couple dollars. And then I had this crazy one, literally just one street down from me. I walked to it where it's at a estate sale, tons of Star Wars stuff. And sure enough, you went in there and they had almost anything you could name from the original Star Wars line. I mean, full Death Star set, all this kind of stuff. And they wanted astronomical figures for it. I mean, way more than eBay prices. Matter of fact, I went back on the last day of the sale when they had the sign up that said 75% off. And at 75% off, they were still higher than eBay prices. So I asked the guy, running it, what's the deal with all this stuff? Like, what are you going to do with it once you close down? And they're like, oh, the people that are selling this, they aren't dead. Like, usually a estate sale means people are dead and everything just goes in the dumpster. Like, oh no, they're moving to Florida. They wanted to downsize. They're just going to take all this stuff with them. And I'm like, all right, well, I guess they're taking some 1970s Star Wars toys with them to Florida.
Yeah, good luck.
Because nobody, and there were tons of people looking at it because the thing was advertised as having all these vintage toys and stuff. So a lot of people were there to look at them and just not buying because the prices were absurd. And there have been other ones where, you just find some rare item just kind of hidden amongst a bunch of other stuff. I mean, some of my best video game finds have just been that too, where it's like, here's a stack of VCRs. Oh, and by the way, there's a Philips CDI in the middle because it just looks like a VCR to anybody else.
What's your absolute best vintage game find you ever got? Like, is there one game that you got at such an incredible deal or something of that nature. If you could pick
It's
one
hard
of
to
them.
say. I mean, there are a couple. Like I got one of the rarest Intellivision games. There's a Jetsons game for the Intellivision.
Oh, wow.
That is supposedly super rare. And that was just in a box. Like someone had a box of Intellivision games. It said Intellivision, and games $5. And I didn't even look in the box. It wasn't until I got it home that I even saw it was in there. And yes, Philips CDI is a great find. I mean, that's even a broken Philips CDI is worth $100. And the only way you'd ever find one of those is if you know what a CDI looks like, because otherwise, like I said, it just looks like a VCR or some random piece of stereo equipment. So I got a lot of kind of weird, I don't know how much money it's worth, but like original laser discs from arcade games that were just like in a box of laser discs on clearance somewhere. Like, don't know where that came from or why it's in there, but I'll buy it, right?
So you mean Dragon's Lair, something like that?
Yeah, I got Space Ace down here. I paid, I don't know, $3-4 for it. It was
So what is this?
So Dragon's Lair
Yes.
and Space Ace, you know how it looked so good back in the early 80s. How did they do that? It was a laser disc. So as it loaded up the next scene, it just played the next part of the laser disc.
I didn't know that. That
And
game looks so great.
They
but
broke all the time.
Yeah, it was in this weird package where it said like the package just had a sticker that said like original Laserdisc from arcade game, watch all the scenes. Like put in regular disc player to watch all the scenes. So at some point when they tore these games down, they must have just said, "Oh, maybe we can make back a few bucks selling them like movies."
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think it worked. Someone in Highland Park bought one apparently because I ended up getting it from them. So yeah, just the best deals tend to be where people don't know what they have.
Absolutely, yeah.
I don't know if you're supposed to feel bad. Like, have you ever gotten a deal? I know we're almost out of time, but have you ever gotten a deal like on a lot of games where you kind of felt like maybe I should pay these people more than I'm paying them?
You know what? In my experience with toys, I mean, if you're telling someone a bold lie, then that's not to me. That's not the moral way to go. But if someone is asking $10 for a box of something and you're willing to pay the $10, then I think that's a fair deal. And I think that's, you got to take advantage of those moments in life because, they don't come up very often. So It's not like you're ripping someone off. It's they're asking you for a certain amount of money for something and you're willing to pay that money. So, I mean, I find it to be perfectly acceptable. But yeah, if you told someone, oh, you know what, this is not worth a penny, and then I give them a couple bucks, then you're kind of lying and take advantage of them. But at the same time, with modern technology, people have the resource to do their research and do their homework. I mean, I'm personally not going to lie to somebody, but if someone asks a certain price for something, I'll gladly hand it to them. Sometimes I'll
hey, this is actually worth $1,000 or something, and then
right. Something's only worth what someone's willing to pay. It's the old adage, I guess.
Yeah, and then recently I picked up some Pac-Man merchandise that I can't actually get a price on. So I ran to a guy at a gaming convention that literally was selling nothing but Pac-Man merchandise. I described this one like Pac-Man lamp that I found, and he like this is a guy who literally deals in selling Pac-Man merchandise, and he didn't know what I was talking about.
Wow.
So I assume that's a really great find. I've never seen one on eBay, but it was one of these things where I get these emails about like estate sales in the area, and I was just flipping through the pictures, and I'm like, that's like a weird Pac-Man lamp in back. I wonder what that is. And I get there, and it's this crazy like 80s. I don't know if you've ever seen these. It's like not quite a lava lamp, but it's like a tower, and you put a light bulb inside, and then the heat from the light bulb causes the plastic on the inside to spin, creating like an effect, like the sort of motion effect. There's some name for these style of lamps. I don't know.
And I don't either. Is it and it's a licensed product?
Oh yeah, it's a real product. I could find a thing on eBay not on eBay, but on the internet describing this lamp. And I got there and they wanted like $30 for the lamp, and I'm just like, if I have no idea what this thing is, it's probably worth more than $30.
Absolutely.
And regardless, I'm actually going to use it like a lamp. So
that's awesome.
And I do. I've got it right over here, and I will turn it on. It's not in view of my camera, unfortunately. It's kind of hard to move. It's big. It's way. I wasn't sure I was going to get home because it's like big but fragile. So.
Yeah, as an action figure collector, I've gotten to the point where I've come across most anything that if it's something I've never seen before, usually it's something worth taking a risk on, because if I haven't seen it, and I'm not as I'm the all knowing, but if it's something so obscure that I haven't seen it, it's probably worth buying.
Well, you've been doing this since you were 14.
That's true. That's true.
Is there a retro game from, NES to Genesis or PlayStation that you would like us to eventually do for our game club? Is there anything that comes up to mind that you're like, that was a great game?
Well, Contra was a great game, but that's like amateur stuff, because everyone loved Contra.
We did Tetris on here a few weeks ago.
Oh, yeah?
So,
okay.
yeah.
I loved Contra, but I really did like Karnov. I don't know why. And Rygar. Rygar was another great game, but there was a point in Rygar that I just couldn't get past, and it was almost to the point of frustration.
We always talk about that game as one of the most unsettling games ever.
Why is that?
It's color palette or music.
Yeah, the NES version at least. The arcade version is kind of a different game. So it doesn't have that same effect on me.
I'll have to revisit it, because I remember playing it and enjoying it, but I remember there was a certain level or certain point that there just was no way I was getting past.
Going back, it's an odd game.
I liked, I think it was Wizards and Warriors 2, where you were a medieval knight.
Mm-hmm.
That, for some reason, I haven't played that since 30 years or whatever, but my memory of it was that it was so ahead of its time graphic wise and play wise, but I bet if I saw it now I probably would be very disappointed. But at the time I remember thinking it was like way ahead of its time.
So realistic.
Yeah. Like the movement of this knight.
Well, you want to give your podcast and your store another plug?
Sure. So my webcast is just on YouTube. It's NerdOut, starting with a K, KNERDOUT. It's just two guys goofing off, talking about toys, comics, and video games. Or not so much video games, but action figures on YouTube. And then my store is NerdOut. You can reach us at nerdouttoys.com. And my store will be opening in Oak Park this Saturday, which will probably be
about the time
this comes out.
Yeah.
And that's in Oak Park, yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So again, if you got any feedback, email at retrogameclub.net.
And I guess that wraps up episode 24.
Yeah. So thanks for listening.